Please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
Hello and a warm welcome to a very special exclusive. Now, over the last couple of months, any conversation surrounding industry in Tamil Nadu has resonated with just one name, and that's Sterlite Copper. Now, this is largely because of an incident that occurred, of course, on May 22nd, where 13 protesters in the district of Tuticorin were fired upon and killed for protesting an extension or an expansion of the Sterlite Copper plant, which, of course, is located within the district. But the real story, remember, goes back 2 decades when Sterlite Copper was established in the state of Tamil Nadu and was ever since facing a number of violations, allegations of environmental violations and the like. Now, joining us to discuss all, of course, that has transpired in the last couple of months and the last couple of decades is Mr. P. Ramnath, CEO of Sterlite Industries.
Hi.
Good to have you, sir.
Thanks, Jude.
You know, there are two stories here, really. One, of course, is all that's occurred in the last couple of months, like I mentioned, you know, since the 22nd of May. But there's another side of the story, one that goes back 22 years. Now, we'll come to the incident, of course, in just a bit, but I have to ask you, for the last couple of decades since you have existed in the state of Tamil Nadu, have operated the copper plant itself, there have been several allegations with regard to violations that you may have committed, largely on the environmental front, as a consequence of which on the health front. And you at Sterlite Copper have gone about denying each and every of these claims, each and every one of these allegations, stating that you are a zero effluent plant. You continue to say the National Green Tribunal has cleared you as late as 2013, and therefore you are innocent.
I think the entire perception in Tuticorin is that since we are the largest plant in Tuticorin, all the ills, all the pollution, everything that can go wrong in Tuticorin is because of us. I think that's a completely wrong perception. And you may know that there are currently around 4,000 megawatts of power plants capacity which has been set up in Tuticorin. And all these 4,000 megawatts of power plants, they use basically coal as a fuel. And coal contains nearly 0.5% to 2.5% of sulfur. And when coal is burnt, sulfur dioxide is emitted into the air. And this sulfur dioxide is sent directly into the air without any capture of the sulfur dioxide by the power plants. Because as of now, power plants are not mandated to have any kind of a system, any flue gas desulfurization system, or any kind of particulate matter mitigation system, etc. So therefore, you'll find that the entire sulfur dioxide actually gets spewed out into the air. On the other hand, if you see the Sterlite Copper installation, we have sulfuric acid plants. We have 2 sulfuric acid plants which have been in operation. And these sulfuric acid plants, they capture 99.95% of the sulfur dioxide which is emitted from the smelting process. And this entire thing is being captured, converted into sulfuric acid and put into very good uses into the core industry.
Absolutely, and fair enough, because the report also states that the findings are due to air pollution caused by industries and automobiles. It does not name you in particular.
Exactly.
So that's perfectly all right. However, a second allegation has also cropped up, that of the groundwater contamination. And what this clearly says is that, firstly, there was the National Environmental Engineering Research Institute which conducted the research into groundwater in the area. And this began as early as 1998, and the first one said that there was arsenic, cesium and lead levels in groundwater which were much higher than prescribed standards. Secondly, it also said that, you know, given the status of the water quality, the TNPCB must exercise care in permitting establishment of any new water-intensive industries in the area. Now, when you claim to be a zero effluent company, I fail to understand how, very coincidentally, water levels and water contamination levels in and around the area in that your factory is established seems to spike. Could you please explain that?
Again, I would reiterate here that since inception, we are a zero effluent discharge company. It is part of the conditions of the consent to operate. So therefore, as a responsible company, we ensure that we do not waste any water that we use. So what we have done is we have set up 3 RO plants. The last one was set up, the latest one was set up maybe about 3 years ago with GE technology. And the entire water that we use is actually reused and put back into the process. And we take water from the outside from a desalination unit, 70% of what we need additional is taken from this desalination unit, and we are dependent only to the extent of 30% from the TWAD board.
Then why, sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but then why did, of course, the NEERI report state that the effluent treatment plant was unable to treat the effluent standards stipulated by the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board within your factory?
No, I think there was something, at that point in time we had 2 effluent treatment plants, and as I said, the latest one was set up in about 3 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago it was set up in GE technology. So with that, we have completely set up the kind of capacity that is required to entirely treat whatever is the water that we reuse in the plant, and then put it back into the process again. And in fact, in 2011, the NGO and Mr. Vaiko, they had visited our plant as part of the NEERI delegation, and then they had themselves taken groundwater samples, and this was tested and found to be absolutely fine. In fact, I can show you the entire reports of groundwater, what is the baseline of all these marker pollutants like arsenic, iron, fluoride, zinc, etc., versus what is there right now in our plant as well as in and around our plant in all the villages. So if you see, all the values are absolutely within the limits, and these are not our values, these are TNPCB values, because every month TNPCB sends a delegation, and in our presence they take groundwater samples and they get it tested in the lab, and the reports are given to us, and the reports are, of course, maintained in their records.
And yet in 2005, when 8 bore wells and 2 dug wells around the plant were dug up, as far as magnesium, cadmium, copper and selenium levels were concerned, all of these minerals were found to exceed prescribed standards. Why is it so that despite your claiming you're a zero effluent factory, that there is no violation, that you engage in effective effluent treatment, it's coincidental that all of this happens in the immediate vicinity of your factory itself? I
would say that all these matters have already been dealt with in the Supreme Court in 2013. The Supreme Court has very clearly said that there may have been some deviations as per the NEERI report, but these deviations are not so serious that they cannot be rectified. Supreme Court also said that our plant has operated for a certain period of time without a consent to operate. And that, I can tell you, is not because of our issue. We have been applying to the consent for the renewal of the consent to operate every year, and paid the fees to the extent of 15 to 20 lakhs, or whatever is the fees that TNPCB charges. But TNPCB, because of their own procedural constraints or whatever, they had not renewed it for a period of time. So I would say that for the fault of TNPCB for not renewing it, for not doing their procedural aspect properly, we have been fined the 100, or rather I would say that we've been asked to deposit 100 crores to take care of any kind of environmental matters that needed to be done in the region. Now thereafter, this 100 crores has been deposited in 2013 with the collector, and this has, since then, the interest is roughly around 40 crores. Out of this 40 crores, only 4 crores have been spent on roads and not on any kind of environmental aspect. So are we to assume that there was nothing wrong in the environment because of which the TNPC did not find any reason at all to spend the 40 crores?
And yet in March 2018, when you sought out consent to reopen and operate, the TNPCB put it on stay, clearly citing environmental concerns. In 2013, for that Supreme Court order that you refer to as well, a 100 crore fine was laid on.
It was a deposit.
A deposit, of course, which was subsequently used as funds, which you point
Not
out
fully,
to only
the extent of 10%.
Only an extent of 10% was used. But the fact is, each and every one of these rulings, of these orders, clearly point out to your company being a violator.
As I said, the Supreme Court very clearly said that the deviations are not something which cannot be set right. Thereafter, we had the NGT hearing, and the NGT had appointed a very independent committee consisting of the CPCB member secretary, the TNPCB member secretary, 2 IIT professors. And this committee of 4 members visited our plant 3 times. And all these times, they had entirely looked at the entire SOPs, our equipment, etc. And in the last visit, we were allowed to operate in their presence. And then for 7 days, the plant was allowed to operate. And we said very clearly that we have a system of interlocks. whereby if the sulfur dioxide limit exceeds the set limit, the entire plant will come to a standstill. And they said, we don't believe you. And we said, okay, fine, we'll artificially increase the sulfur dioxide content. And immediately, the entire plant came to a standstill. And that is when they believed us. And that is when, based on that report, the NGT gave us the go-ahead to go.
All right. Two very important concerns continue to exist, though. The first, of course, is the fact that, and this was pointed out by the Madurai bench of the Madras High Court as well, that you got the NGT clearance and the environmental clearance from the Ministry of Environment, rather, without having a public hearing. Your defense was that, considering it's located within, an already assigned industrial complex, a public hearing wouldn't be necessary. But what's important to point out is also the fact that the industrial complex did not exist. It was a proposed expansion for your proposed plant as well.
I don't agree with that. The entire industrial complex of SIPCOT was set up prior to 2006. And there is an EIA notification which said very clearly. But phase 2, of course, was applied for in 2014. The EIA notification very clearly said that any industrial complex which was set up prior to 2006 and any industry which was set up in such an industrial complex need not get a public hearing. Now, we were allotted lands based on lands which were acquired prior to 2006, and it was part of the SIPCOT industrial complex.
But technically, sir, the phase 2 of the industrial complex did not exist until 2014.
Existed. We were given lands prior to that. In fact, we were to start this complex, the phase 2 of our expansion, we were to start sometime in 2009.
Mm-hmm. But of course, it also states that it was only in 2014 that SIPCOT applied for permission to develop 1,616 acres. So technically, you weren't quite although you may have been allotted the land, in discussions with the government, the permission to develop it as an industrial complex wasn't obtained until 2014. So technically, there was no phase 2.
I really don't agree with that because, SIPCOT has filed an affidavit to this thing in the Supreme Court stating that the land that was given to us for the expansion was part of the land which was acquired prior to 2006. We have an affidavit which has been filed by SIPCOT in the Supreme Court.
So your point of contention is that acquisition of land should be taken as the benchmark to whether or not.
Absolutely. And there is an affidavit to that extent filed by SIPCOT itself in the court.
There's also this debate about whether or not you were one of the more responsible companies in the area. 25% of a green belt was the obligation that you had to satisfy, while putting out or running an industry in the red zone, which is, of course, an extremely high, potentially polluting industry. Data states that you have not complied with that,
I think, as I said earlier,
7.6% as far as the NEERI report is concerned, as opposed to 25%, which was the obligation.
As I said earlier, all these points have been dealt with in the Supreme Court in 2013. And these points are being brought about again and again and again. So I would like to reiterate it, so to put an end to this aspect once for all. We have developed 43 hectares of green belt in our entire facility, which is as per the requirement of the MOEF. So I think I want to put this to an end. We don't want these kind of questions to keep coming up, to be raked up again and again by NGOs or by various parties. So I think we need to go to the Supreme Court. We need to read the Supreme Court order and see and register as to what has actually been written out there.
All right. So in the end, what is the conclusion? Do you feel that this is pretty much an image problem that you are fighting as opposed to a legal one?
I would say so. I think there's a lot of misconception which has been brought about by social media, very irresponsible social media, and which I think have brought up very incendiary, incisive messages, and which is absolutely not done.
We'll have to slip in a very short break, but when we're back, we'll talk to Mr. P. Ramnath about just how the incidents that occurred on May 22nd have dented possibly the image of Sterlite Copper. Keep watching CNBC TV18. Welcome back. We're in conversation with P. Ramnath on CNBC TV18 on the Sterlite Copper controversy here in Tamil Nadu and how it has affected both the company's fortunes and the image of industry in Tamil Nadu. Mr. Ramnath, I have to ask you, in the aftermath of the protests and the violence that followed, the one allegation that you have made and continue to make this claim is that it wasn't so much an organic protest as opposed to being engineered by a few elements who had certain interests in mind. Right. Let's set the record straight. Who are these elements that you refer to and what reason could they possibly have?
Let me just take you back to 2013, since the NGT hearing. Since then to 2018, in the 5 years, there have been absolutely no complaints from the villages around. There have been no show cause notices from the Pollution Control Board. And suddenly, then sometime in February, the entire thing is, suddenly erupts. And so therefore, and then it erupts into this kind of a violence. So therefore, I think there is obviously an element of some kind of a catalyst which has actually come in and thrown the entire thing, out of control. And we've been saying this, that, the locals definitely, would not have this kind of a organization of, having this kind of social media messages going around, so many incendiary messages.
So who are these individuals that you are laying these allegations on?
I don't know whether they are individuals or whether they are a group. We keep hearing, we get the news only from what we read. We read about a group, an extremist, leftist group called Makkal Adhikaram. So that from that, we ourselves, don't have. We obviously, we are not a detective agency to do this kind of operation. So we depend on what the news puts out, and then we try to connect the dots.
It's interesting you're bringing up the name of that leftist group, Makkal Adhikaram, because incidentally, just a couple of weeks ago, 2 lawyers belonging to that group, allegedly, Vanjinathan and Hariharan, were arrested by the police for engineering these protests, causing arson, causing a number of these, violations of law. And a couple of residents' organizations, a fishermen's organization, has also filed a police complaint stating that they were coerced into joining the protests. A validation of your claim, perhaps?
Yes, I would say so. I would say so. I really cannot vouch that these 2 gentlemen belong to that particular group or not. But certainly, if you connect the dots, I would say that probably there is some kind of truth to that.
So there is a perception that a backtracking by a couple of these people, by a couple of groups of these people, saying that they were coerced, was on account of wanting to get away from all of these, all of what was occurring. Is there a sense, and there is a sense, of course, that did you have a role to play in strong-arming most of this?
Sterlite Copper has absolutely no role in this because we have nothing to do. We are actually very busy in our own jobs in trying to find out, how to protect our own assets and how to making sure that, we try to look at, how to, evacuate the material that is already there, in trying to get care and maintenance approval so that we can go inside, get access to our plant. So we are busy with our own job.
So there is no corporate
absolutely nothing, absolutely nothing at all. We have nothing to do with that.
Okay. What's very ironic is just how a few years ago you were invited to the Global Investors Meet. Your plant, the extension, was proposed to be one of the big ticket investments into the state of Tamil Nadu. And things have changed so quickly ever since. The state government that, of course, invited you, its Pollution Control Board, has said that you were committing environmental violations. The state government has pretty much made its bread and butter to ensure that you don't reopen that plant. In fact, they are up against you in the National Green Tribunal as well. Do you think this would have occurred if Jayalalitha was Chief Minister still?
I don't know. I can only say that probably in that time, the law and order situation was much better. So, but I really wouldn't like to comment on the government at all. So, yeah.
All right. And what also strikes me as, very interesting is that, in the aftermath of the protests and all that has occurred, while there has, of course, been a large-scale allegation against you and the fact that you've committed these environmental violations and subsequent backtracking, you as a company have also ensured that you are using all legal avenues available, be it the court, the Madras High Court, the National Green Tribunal. In fact, the Tamil Nadu government has also gone on to state in the National Green Tribunal that you are misusing these legal avenues available to you by using them at multiple times at a single go. What would your response to these allegations be?
Not really. The thing is that we went to the appellate tribunal because we were, that was a remedy which was available at that point in time when the Pollution Control Board refused to give us the CTO or renew the CTO. That was the only avenue available because we could not go to the High Court because the first option was the tribunal. And thereafter, there have been subsequent orders, by the closure order and then the closure order by the government. So there was no point in trying to do it at the appellate tribunal. The appellate tribunal did not have any powers to go against the government order. And And then we found that the National Green Tribunal was one, was one avenue where all these things, could be dealt with. So therefore, we already closed the Madurai High Court issue, asking for care and maintenance. And the hearing in the 18th July will come up in the NGT. So based on that, we will take further options.
Would you reconsider wanting to do more business in Tamil Nadu?
No, not really. I mean, we are tied up with Tamil Nadu. We've been here for the past 20 years. And I think we are one with Tuticorin, I would say that. And one record I would like to say is that I think there has been some kind of a misconception that there are full of North Indians in Sterlite Copper. I would like to set that record also straight. There are 70% of the employees, which means both direct and indirect employees, are from Tamil Nadu. And of that, another 70% are from Tuticorin itself. So all these protests are putting Tuticorin people out of a job and Tamil Nadu people out of a job, majorly.
All right. Given the fact that you, of course, have the largest footprint in the area, there is, substantial losses that might occur. But on the topic of losses itself, how much of a loss is Sterlite Industries taking on account of the closure? What's the hit like?
I would say that rather than focusing on our loss, I would rather focus on the loss for the downstream industries.
Sure, and I'm coming to that in just a bit, but as Sterlite Industries, what's the kind of
Sterlite Industries, I mean, we have lost, say, 70,000 tons of copper production in the last 2 months. So that's what it is. But this 70,000 tons goes to the domestic industry and to the exports. And a lot of copper customers are facing the heat because the copper prices have increased by 5 to 10%. And because of this, a number of small producers of, say, motor producers in Coimbatore, etc., they have shut down because they just cannot take the increase in price.
If you were to collate all these losses and put out a number, an approximate ballpark number, if you will, what would that loss number be like?
Anywhere maybe about 10 to 20,000 crores.
And this is with regard to downstream industries as well?
Yes, yes.
Around your factory. Given the fact that this is, of course, in the courts right now, the case, are you confident of reopening Sterlite Copper?
That's what we would like to do. I mean, ultimately, because we are there in the region and we are committed to Tuticorin and the facts are with us. So I think we are quite confident and certainly, I mean, it may take some time, but we don't know how much time it will take. So we require both a legal, license to operate plus a social license to operate.
Okay. Yeah. And that social license to operate, like you pointed out, could be very crucial to continuing doing business. I have to ask you, looking back, is there anything that you may have done differently or any regrets that you may have had while doing business in Tamil Nadu and Tuticorin?
I would say that probably we should have had our ears more to the ground to actually pick up the signals and then probably act a little more in advance. So that is something probably would, and the other thing is to communicate what the good things that we have done. Probably we should have communicated much better to the people of Tuticorin and also to the people in Chennai, etc.
Do you think your relationship with the government of Tamil Nadu has gone beyond repair, given the fact that they were your partners and now you're pretty much fighting them in court? Is that something that's beyond salvage?
No, maybe I don't know. I mean, I really wouldn't like to comment upon that. But certainly, I mean, we would want to have a good relations with the government because obviously we are in Tamil Nadu, and
intend to stay here?
Absolutely, absolutely.
On that note, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us.
Thank you
very much, Mr. Ramnath. Thank you.